I wasn't expecting anything to change that morning. It was a Wednesday, painfully average, and I had exactly 14 minutes to get to work or risk being late again. My morning routine had long become muscle memory. Toothbrush, deodorant, half-assed shirt ironing, and the daily inner debate of whether I could survive on vending machine coffee one more day. But my craving for actual caffeine won. That's how I ended up ducking into the little coffee shop 2 blocks from my office, the one I usually ignored because it looked too trendy for someone like me. You know the type. Chalkboard menus, hanging plants, indie music playing low enough to make you question your hearing. I stepped inside, expecting overpriced coffee and maybe a free Wi-Fi password. What I didn't expect was him. He was behind the counter, wearing a faded gray t-shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that didn't belong in a coffee shop. Tan, lean, a bit of scruff along his jaw, and a smile that looked lopsided, like it couldn't decide whether it was genuine or sarcastic. "First timer?" he asked, eyeing me like he already knew the answer. I nodded, awkwardly stepping up to the counter. What gave it away? The look of mild panic or the corporate khakis? He grinned, and there was something about the way his lips curved, just the left side, that made my stomach flip a little. "A little of both," he said. "You want something fancy or something that'll just slap you awake?" "Slap me," I said, too quickly, then immediately regretted the phrasing. "I mean, coffee. That wakes you up. Not like..." "Forget it," he laughed. Not loud, not mocking. Just that soft, genuine kind that made you feel like you'd said something clever even when you hadn't. "Got it," he said. "One slap you awake coming up." He moved with practiced ease, hands moving across the espresso machine like he'd built it himself. I found myself watching him, not in the creepy way, I hoped, but in that unconscious, magnetized way you stare at something, someone, before you realize you're doing it. He handed me the drink a minute later, a to-go cup with my name scrawled in bold Sharpie. Jake. I hadn't told him my name. I raised an eyebrow. "Guess I'm good at reading people," he said with that damn crooked smile again. I took a sip. It was strong. Almost too strong. But in a good way. The kind that punched you in the mouth but apologized afterward. "This is really good." "I know," he said. "I made it." And then, just like that, he turned to the next customer, and I was dismissed. But something about that interaction stuck with me all day. The barista with the forearms and the crooked smile had lodged himself somewhere in my brain, and no amount of spreadsheets or customer calls could shake him loose. I didn't even catch his name. So naturally, the next morning, I went back. Same time, same shop, and there he was, leaning over the counter like he'd been waiting for me. "Corporate's back," he said. "You want the usual?" I laughed. "Are you gonna keep calling me that?" "Until you give me something else to call you." I told him my name, Jake, officially this time, and he finally introduced himself. "Liam," he said. "Nice to meet you, Jake," who was desperate for coffee. And just like that, it became a thing. Every morning, I'd show up a few minutes early just to see if I could make him laugh. He always had a comment ready, sometimes playful, sometimes borderline rude, but always delivered with that grin that made me think maybe he liked our back and forth as much as I did. We didn't exchange numbers, didn't follow each other on Instagram, didn't do anything that would make it something more than what it was. But it felt like something more. I started ordering drinks I didn't even like, just to extend the conversation. Lavender, oat milk, whatever? Sure, why not? As long as he was the one making it. And slowly, little details started to slip through. He was 27, 2 years older than me, lived in a studio apartment above a bookstore, played guitar but only when no one was listening, once wanted to be an architect but dropped out of school after his dad got sick. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to sit on the other side of that counter and talk to him until the place closed. But I didn't. Because I was Jake. Corporate khakis, work badge, 9 to 5. With a manager who used phrases like circle back and synergy. Liam belonged to a world with late-night jam sessions and people who used their hands for more than keyboard shortcuts. But one Friday morning, everything shifted. He wasn't behind the counter when I walked in. I almost turned around, pretending I had somewhere better to be, but then I saw him, sitting at one of the corner tables, staring out the window with a paper cup in his hand and his headphones in. He looked tired. Not just sleepy, tired, like he hadn't slept or had one of those nights where sleep didn't fix anything. I hesitated, then walked over. Is the machine broken, or are you just slacking off? He pulled out one earbud and looked up, his smile more tired than crooked this time. Day off, he said. Thought I'd try the customer side for once. Big risk, I said, pulling out the chair across from him before I could overthink it. You don't know what kind of weirdos hang out here. He raised an eyebrow but didn't protest. And just like that, I was sitting across from him. No counter, no barrier, just us. And that morning, I learned that Liam was even more interesting off-duty. But I also learned something else, something that changed everything. Because when he looked at me that morning, with no coffee machine between us and no playful grin to hide behind, there was a softness in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. And then he said, I was hoping you'd come in today. I tried to play it cool, but his words, I was hoping you'd come in today, hit harder than I was ready for. Really? I asked, like an idiot. It came out too surprised, too hopeful. Liam shrugged, but his eyes didn't leave mine. Yeah. I don't know. It's been weird not seeing you through the espresso machine. Something in my chest tightened, like someone had tied a knot and started pulling. We sat there for a while, our drinks between us, condensation gathering on the paper cups. I asked him how his day off was going. He asked about my job. We kept the conversation light. But every now and then, I'd catch him staring at me like he was trying to figure something out, like there was more he wanted to say, but didn't know how. At some point, I noticed our knees were brushing under the table. Neither of us moved. Eventually, I glanced at the time and stood up, reluctantly. I should probably get going. Before my boss sends a search party. Liam looked up at me, squinting slightly from the sunlight pouring through the window. Same time Monday? I nodded. Unless you're off again. I'll be there, he said. Gotta keep my best customer happy. I laughed, but inside, I was reeling. I left the shop with the lingering heat of his knee against mine, and the sound of his voice echoing in my head. That weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I'd be in the middle of vacuuming or scrolling through my inbox and suddenly remember the way he said my name, or the moment our eyes locked across that table. By Sunday night, I had fully spiraled into a mental loop of overanalyzing everything. Did he really mean it when he said he was hoping I'd show up? Was he just being nice? Was I reading into this because I wanted there to be something there? I didn't sleep much. Monday morning came, and despite the fatigue under my eyes, I walked into the coffee shop with a flutter in my chest. He was there, behind the counter again, apron on, hair slightly messier than usual. When he saw me, that crooked smile returned, and just like that, the anxiety melted a little. Jake, he said, like it was his favorite word. Liam, I replied, trying not to sound too eager. Got your usual coming right up. While he worked the machine, another barista rang me up, some college kid with a nose ring who barely looked up from the register. I stepped aside and waited near the pickup counter, watching Liam. When he handed me my drink, he leaned in slightly. Hey, you free after work? I blinked. What? He scratched the back of his neck, suddenly less confident. I mean, no pressure, but there's this open mic thing at this bar I sometimes go to. A couple of my friends are performing. I was thinking of checking it out, wondered if you'd want to come. My heart skipped a beat. You asking me on a date? He paused, smiled. Would that be weird? Not to me. Cool, he said, his voice lighter now. I'll text you the details. I don't have your number. He looked mildly scandalized. We've been fake flirting for 2 weeks, and I don't even have your number? I laughed, pulled out my phone, and handed it to him. He typed something in and handed it back. A second later, my phone buzzed. Liam, 7:30. Don't chicken out. I didn't chicken out, but I did spend an unreasonable amount of time picking out what to wear. I settled on a button-down that made me look vaguely put together, and jeans that didn't scream corporate casual. When I got to the bar, he was already there. He looked different, less curated, still him, but softer somehow. A dark denim jacket over a white tee, hands in his pockets, head tilted back as he laughed at something one of his friends said. He saw me and walked over immediately. "Hey," he said, "you came." "Yeah, well, you did say, don't chicken out." "True, I can be very persuasive." The night was easy. Drinks, music, low lighting. His friends were cool, mostly musicians and artsy types, people with sleeve tattoos and vintage film cameras. I didn't totally fit in, but Liam made it feel like I did. At one point, he leaned over and said, "You okay?" I nodded, just taking it all in. He smiled, then, quiet, soft, almost shy. "I'm glad you came." And then he reached for my hand under the table, just like that, no fanfare, no big moment. Just his fingers brushing against mine, then curling in like it was the most natural thing in the world. I let him. I didn't want the night to end, but eventually, it did. His friends packed up their instruments, the lights came on, and we were back out on the sidewalk. "I'll walk you to your car," he said, even though mine was parked only half a block away. When we got there, we stood for a second, the silence stretching. I wasn't sure if I should say something, make a joke, thank him, tell him I had a good time. But then he leaned in and kissed me, just like that. No hesitation, no awkward buildup. His lips were warm, slightly chapped, and it was short, just enough to leave me breathless. He pulled back and looked at me like he wasn't sure if he'd overstepped. I grinned. "I'm really glad I came in for coffee that day," I said. He laughed, head tilting toward the sky. "You and me both." We didn't define anything after that kiss. Not that night, not the next morning, not even after the third or fourth one. It just happened. I'd still show up to the cafe every morning, like clockwork, and he'd hand me my drink with that same cocky smirk, but now it came with a wink, or a lingering touch on my wrist, or a "see you later," whispered low so only I could hear it. We started texting, at first just casually, memes, random observations, complaints about the weather. Then it grew into something else, more personal, stuff about his childhood, his dreams of going back to school, the pressure he felt from being the oldest in his family. I opened up too, about my job, my family, how I'd never really done anything spontaneous in my life until I agreed to sit at his table that morning. He teased me for being a little too good at spreadsheets, and I teased him for being a little too good at looking hot while steaming oat milk. But the truth was, I was falling. And fast. One Saturday, about a month into whatever this was, he texted me early in the morning. "Liam, hot beverage. Want to get out of the city?" I blinked at my phone. "What? Like right now?" "Liam, hot beverage. Yeah, bring a hoodie and sunglasses. I'll pick you up in 20. I hesitated for exactly 4 seconds before throwing on jeans, grabbing my keys, and heading downstairs. He showed up in an old Jeep that looked like it had seen better days, windows down, music already playing. "You serious about this?" I asked as I climbed in. He grinned. "Always." We drove for almost 2 hours, out past the suburbs and into the kind of back roads you only end up on if you're lost or in love. He wouldn't tell me where we were going, just kept tapping the steering wheel to the beat of some indie band I'd never heard of. Eventually we pulled into a gravel parking area by a trailhead. "Ever been to Cedar Bluff?" he asked. "Nope." "Good," he said. "Then it'll feel like ours." We hiked for a while, nothing too intense, just enough to get our blood moving and make me feel out of shape. The trail ended at a ridge overlooking a winding river, the sun hitting the water in long, golden streaks. Liam spread out a blanket he'd stuffed into his backpack and sat down like it was the most casual thing in the world. "You brought a picnic?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Technically just snacks and warm Gatorade," he said. "But we can pretend I'm romantic and put together." I laughed, dropping down beside him. The wind tugged at his hair, and for a moment we just sat there, looking out over the valley. You always do this? I asked. Surprise people with secret hikes and off-brand trail mix? Only the ones I like, he said, quiet but clear. That made my chest tighten in the best way. We talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. The kind of conversation that loops and bends and doubles back, filled with long pauses that didn't feel like silence. At one point, I asked, "What are we doing?" Liam looked at me, squinting slightly from the sun. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I like it." "Me too," I admitted. Another pause. "Is it weird that I feel closer to you than I do with people I've known for years?" I asked. "No," he said. "I feel it too." He reached out, fingers brushing mine, then laced them together. We sat like that until the sun started to dip and the chill crept in. We didn't sleep together that night. We didn't even kiss again. Not because we didn't want to, but because it felt like something worth holding on to, something worth not rushing. He drove me home, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally reaching over to squeeze my knee. And when he dropped me off, he just said, "Night, Jake," in this soft, hushed tone that made my name sound like something sacred. I didn't sleep much that night. My heart was too full, my mind too busy replaying everything from his stupid grin to the way his fingers felt wrapped around mine. The next morning, I woke up to a text. "Liam, hope your legs aren't sore, corporate boy. Jake, I hate you. Liam, you love me." My thumbs hovered over the screen. I almost didn't respond. Then I typed, "Jake, maybe I do." After that text, "Maybe I do," something shifted between us. Not in a dramatic, movie-ending kind of way. There were no fireworks or slow-motion kisses in the rain. It was quieter than that. But it was real. Suddenly, we weren't just orbiting each other. We were pulling closer. We started spending more time together outside the coffee shop. Movie nights at my place, lazy Sunday mornings at his, walks through the park after work when neither of us wanted to go home just yet. And he was always touching me. Little things. His knee against mine while we sat on the couch. His hand brushing my lower back when we crossed the street. His thumb resting on the inside of my wrist while we waited in line at the bookstore. It was never overt, never demanding. Just this constant, quiet reassurance that I was wanted. I didn't realize how much I craved that until he gave it to me. And somewhere in the middle of all that, of coffee and park benches and playlists sent at midnight, we just slipped into being something more. He never asked me to be his boyfriend. I never brought it up, but I'd wake up to texts like "thinking about you," or "your laugh's been stuck in my head all day," and I'd smile like an idiot in the middle of my office, heart full and loud. We were just us. One night, he stayed over. It wasn't planned. We were watching a movie, some artsy black and white thing he picked, and halfway through, I looked over and he was asleep on my shoulder. I didn't wake him. I just paused the movie and watched him breathe. He looked so peaceful, his face slack with sleep, lips slightly parted. I wanted to trace the curve of his jaw, memorize it with my fingertips. Eventually, I shifted a little, and he stirred. "You awake?" I whispered. "Barely," he murmured, not opening his eyes. "You want to stay?" He nodded. Didn't even answer out loud. Just crawled into my bed like he'd done it 100 times before, pulling me in after him. We didn't do anything, just lay there. I fell asleep with his arm draped across my stomach, his breath warm on the back of my neck. In the morning, I woke up before him. I turned slowly, trying not to disturb him, and just looked at him. He looked soft, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before, and that's when I realized I was in love with him. Not just crush love, not infatuation, not morning after feelings. The real kind. The quiet kind that sneaks up on you when you're brushing your teeth and suddenly can't stop picturing a future with someone. It scared the hell out of me. So, of course, I did the dumbest thing imaginable. I pulled away. Not all at once, but gradually. Little things. Fewer texts. Shorter replies. Canceling plans with work as an excuse, even when there wasn't much work. I didn't even realize I was doing it until one morning I showed up at the cafe like usual, and Liam handed me my drink without a smile. No wink. No playful jab. Just, "Here you go." And then he turned to the next customer. It was like someone had shut a window, and all the warmth had gone out. I stood there for a second, unsure if I should say something, but the line behind me was long, and he wasn't looking at me. So I left. The whole walk to the office, I felt like I'd swallowed a stone. That night, he didn't text. The next day, I didn't go to the cafe. Neither did I the day after that. On the third day, he texted me, "Liam, you good?" I stared at it for a long time. Then typed, deleted, typed again. Eventually I wrote, "Yeah, just been busy." He didn't reply. Friday night, I found myself walking without thinking. No destination. Just blocks and blocks of sidewalks until I ended up outside the coffee shop staring through the window like a creep. He wasn't there. Of course not. It was 9 p.m. I stood there for a second, debating, then turned and kept walking. I didn't even realize I was heading toward his place until I was standing at his door. I knocked. Twice. No answer. I was about to leave when it opened slowly. Liam stood there in sweatpants and a hoodie, hair messy, eyes tired. "Hey," I said. "Hey." A beat of silence stretched between us. "I've been a dick," I said. His brow arched slightly, but he didn't argue. "I got scared," I admitted, "of how much I like you, of how fast it's all happening, of whatever this is turning into." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "So your solution was to ghost me?" "No," I said quickly. "Not ghost, just fade." "That's worse," I winced. "I know." Another pause. "Liam," I said quietly, "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," he said. "But you did." I looked down at my shoes. "I'm sorry." He didn't say anything, just stood there. Then he opened the door a little wider. "Come in," he said. And just like that, I did. Liam's apartment was warm, dimly lit, smelled faintly of cedar and something citrusy. Maybe that stupid candle he said he hated but kept lighting anyway. He sat down on the couch and didn't say anything, so I stood there for a second, unsure what to do. Then I sat across from him, not next to him. I didn't think I'd earned that yet. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You could have just said you were overwhelmed." "I know," I said, my voice low, "but I didn't want to mess it up." "You pulled away so hard you almost vanished," he replied, still calm, but there was an edge to it. That didn't feel like someone scared of messing up. That felt like someone making a decision. I wanted to tell him that wasn't true, that it hadn't been a decision, not really. It was fear. Stupid, old, familiar fear. The kind that says people like him don't stay with people like me. But I didn't say any of that. "I thought," I said slowly, "if I distanced myself first, it wouldn't hurt as bad if things didn't work out." He let out a quiet breath. "And now?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the little crease between his eyebrows. At the soft shadows under his eyes. At the way his fingers were twisted together in his lap like he was trying not to fidget. Now I'm sitting here realizing that pulling away didn't make me feel safer. It just made me feel worse. He finally met my gaze. "I miss you," I said. "Even when I saw you every day, I missed you." That broke something in him. Or maybe it melted something. Because he leaned back, exhaling slowly, and said, "I've never done this before, you know." "What, dated someone?" "No," he said, cracking a tiny smile. "Let someone mean this much." I swallowed. "Me neither." We sat in that silence for a while. Not tense this time. Not painful. Just quiet and full and heavy in a good way. Then he asked, "You still scared?" "Yeah," I said, "but less." Liam nodded, then patted the couch cushion next to him. "Then come here." I moved without hesitation. He slid his arm around me like it belonged there, like it always had, and I pressed into his side like my body already knew the shape of this moment. After a while, he said, "Just so we're clear, you're not allowed to ghost me again." I smiled. "Even if I panic?" He turned slightly to look at me. Especially if you panic. Got it, I said. Panic equals immediate Liam text. Or a Liam kiss, he offered. Oh, that's a good incentive. He grinned, that same stupid crooked smile that started this whole thing. And then he kissed me. This one wasn't like the others. Not tentative, not rushed, just slow and deliberate and grounding, like he was reminding me where home was. When he pulled back, he kept his forehead pressed to mine. You make me feel seen, he said softly, and that hit harder than anything else. Because I knew exactly what he meant. For so long, I had felt invisible, even in rooms full of people. But with Liam, I felt noticed, not just looked at, but seen. I rested my hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under my palm. I want to do this right, I whispered. You're doing just fine, he said. And in that moment, I believed him. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest and weirdest of my life. Happy because Liam was in it, constantly, in little ways that made everything better. He'd send me photos of dumb latte art he'd made when things were slow at the shop. I'd leave him notes in his apron pocket when I stopped by, sometimes just a smiley face, sometimes dumb poems that made him groan. We found a rhythm. Friday night dinners at my place, Saturday morning walks to the farmer's market near his. Lazy afternoons stretched across his couch, me pretending to be interested in his favorite documentaries, him pretending not to fall asleep halfway through. But weird, because this was all new to me. I'd never been in a relationship that felt this steady, grounded. It scared the hell out of me. One night, while we were lying in bed, Liam reading something on his phone, me tracing shapes on his stomach, I asked, "Do you think this is going too fast?" He glanced down at me. "You mean us?" "Yeah." He tilted his head, thoughtful. "Do you feel like it is?" "Sometimes, but not in a bad way. Just in a, this feels like it should scare me more kind of way." "It doesn't?" "It does," I admitted, "but I don't want it to stop." Liam smiled. "Then maybe it's not going too fast. Maybe it's just right." I rolled my eyes. That was dangerously close to being poetic. "You love it." I did. Around that time, my company started planning a big launch event. Some fancy rooftop cocktail thing that required everyone to show up looking like they'd just stepped out of a magazine. I didn't really care about it until I got the invite and saw the +1 option. I stared at the RSVP form for a full 10 minutes. It wasn't about whether I wanted to take Liam. I did. God, I did. It was about everything that came with it, walking into a corporate event with a guy on my arm, watching my coworkers blink and recalculate everything they thought they knew about me, hearing the subtle comments, feeling the weight of their assumptions. But then I remembered how Liam looked that morning, when he handed me my coffee with a sleepy grin and a quiet, "Hey, babe," that still made my heart skip. I clicked yes. Liam said yes before I even finished asking. Fancy party with free food and the chance to make your uptight coworkers uncomfortable? Say less. Could you maybe not try to start a fight with the finance team? I asked. No promises, he said, grinning. When the night came, he showed up at my apartment in a dark navy suit and no tie, his hair pulled back and his usual scruff looking intentional instead of lazy. I stared at him for a solid 10 seconds before managing to say, "Wow." He smirked. That a good wow? That's a, I might forget how to speak English during this event wow. He stepped closer, fixing my collar. Then we're even. The party itself was exactly what I expected. Loud, stiff, expensive. People pretending they weren't 3 cocktails in. My boss cornered us within the first 5 minutes, launching into a monologue about Q4 projections. Liam smiled, nodded politely, and then leaned down to whisper in my ear, "Say the word and I'll fake a medical emergency." But the weird part was, I didn't feel as self-conscious as I thought I would. Having Liam there grounded me. He didn't try to be anything other than himself, charming, slightly chaotic, mildly inappropriate. And he made me laugh, which honestly was the best kind of armor. At one point, we stepped out onto the balcony for some air. The city stretched out below us, glittering in the dark. Liam leaned against the railing, watching me. "What?" I asked. He shrugged. "You look good in this world." "What world?" "This one," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the skyline. "The suits, the spreadsheets, the rooftop view." I laughed. "You make it sound like I'm Batman." He smiled. "I just mean you fit more than you think." I looked down at the streetlights, the tiny cars crawling through the grid. Sometimes I don't feel like I do. Liam stepped closer, brushing his knuckles against mine. "Then I'll remind you." That did something to me. That simple, quiet promise. He always knew how to say exactly what I needed, without it sounding like a line, without pretending to have all the answers. Just like that, I wanted to kiss him. Not because we were at some romantic vantage point, but because he saw me. Because I felt more like myself when he was next to me than I ever had alone. So I did. Right there on the rooftop of a building full of my coworkers, I kissed him. Not hard, not showy, just soft, intentional. And when I pulled back, he whispered, "Definitely a wow." We left the party early, not because anything went wrong. If anything, it went better than expected. But because the second we got into the elevator, Liam leaned close and whispered, "You're lucky I kept my hands to myself all night." That flipped a switch in me. The ride down was quiet, tense in the best way. His fingers brushed mine, and that was all it took for every thought in my head to go fuzzy. By the time we got back to my place, the door had barely shut before his hands were on my waist, pulling me in, lips finding mine like we were making up for lost time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was something else, something hungry but careful, like he wanted to memorize me. And I wanted to let him. We made it to the bedroom without breaking apart, my blazer falling to the floor somewhere near the hallway, his tie long forgotten, buttons undone with lazy precision. The way he looked at me as I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing heavy, shirt half open. God, it made me feel like I was everything, like I was worth seeing. He ran a thumb along my jaw and said, "You have no idea what you do to me." "Same," I whispered, pulling him in. The rest of the night was a blur of heat, whispered names, and the kind of closeness that makes your chest ache in the best way. But what I remember most is what happened after, when it was quiet, when the air was still warm, but not in the way that made your skin sweat, warm in the way that made you want to stay. He was lying on his back, one hand behind his head, the other loosely curled around mine, where it rested on his chest. Neither of us said much. Eventually, he broke the silence. "I'm glad you didn't run." "I tried," I said softly. "Didn't get very far." He smiled, but didn't look at me, just stared at the ceiling. I've never let someone this close before. "I know. It's kind of terrifying." "Yeah," I agreed. "But it's good too." He turned his head then, eyes meeting mine in the dark. "Yeah, it is. We didn't say I love you that night. It wasn't time." Not quite, but the words were in the room with us, hanging in the air like steam from a cup of coffee. Undeniable, invisible, inevitable. After that, we started saying "we" more. We made dinner plans. We looked at weekend getaways. We went grocery shopping together, arguing over cereal brands and ending up buying both. He met my friends. They loved him, of course. Too much, honestly. I met his sister, who teased him relentlessly and gave me a high five when he wasn't looking. We were a thing, officially, publicly, comfortably, and it was good. So good, it started to scare me again. But this time, I didn't pull away. This time, I told him. One night, while we were doing dishes. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," I said. He looked up, eyebrows raised. "You want something to go wrong?" "No," I laughed. I don't know. I've never had anything this good for this long." He dried his hands, came around the counter, and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Well," he said, chin on my shoulder, "then maybe it's time to let yourself have something good." I leaned back into him. "Yeah," I said, "maybe it is." It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no grand gesture, no stormy night or slow motion run through the rain. Just a quiet moment, in the middle of the kitchen, with unwashed mugs in the sink and Liam wearing one of my hoodies that hung too long on his arms. We were making breakfast, him manning the pan, me half asleep with a coffee in hand, and he turned around, spatula in one hand, and said, "I love you." Just like that. Like he'd been holding it in for weeks, and it finally slipped out. I blinked. "What?" He paused, suddenly aware of what he'd said, but he didn't take it back. He didn't flinch or laugh it off. He just looked at me, eyes steady. "I love you," he said again, quieter this time. Didn't mean to just blurt it out while flipping eggs, but yeah, I do. And in that second, everything around me slowed down, not in the surreal movie kind of way, but in the real way. The kind where all the noise in your head goes still and the only thing that matters is the person standing in front of you. I smiled. "I was going to say it last night," I admitted. "But you fell asleep halfway through The Big Lebowski and started snoring," he laughed. "You're kidding." "Nope, loud. Jesus." "I still love you, though." His eyes softened. "Yeah? Yeah." He crossed the space between us and kissed me. Not like a first kiss, not even like a passionate one. Just a kiss that said home. We stood there for a while, arms wrapped around each other, the smell of slightly burned toast wafting through the room. And that was it. There was no defining moment that turned our lives upside down. No twist, no secret reveal. Just two people figuring out how to show up for each other every day. Sometimes I'd still catch myself watching him in the small moments. The way he concentrated while writing out specials on the cafe chalkboard, or the way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was nervous. And I'd think, how the hell did I get so lucky? He'd say the same about me, in his own way, usually something like, "Can't believe I fell for a guy who alphabetizes his spice rack," followed by a kiss to my temple. Months passed. Life didn't slow down. Work stayed messy. His apartment still had the worst water pressure in the world. We still bickered over dumb things. How to load the dishwasher. Whether you have to rinse rice before cooking it, you do. But every night, he'd still reach for me. Every morning, he'd still make coffee for two. And every time I heard the cafe bell chime when I walked in, he'd look up, flash that crooked smile, and say, "There he is." And I'd smile back, knowing exactly what he meant.